Good evening, everybody. Hello, everybody. I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about the Leica Q2. So I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was on YouTube and I saw some of my favorite photography channels cover the Leica Q2. I don't remember all of the channels, but I remember watching some videos from DP Review and the Snap Chick. And I was just struck by those videos. So I think a couple of weeks ago when the Leica Q2 got sent out to these reviewers, the general opinion was that this was a pretty decent camera. I think most people had a pretty positive opinion. People were saying that it was a very exciting camera and it was fun to use, and it was just an interesting camera. But what struck me was why. I cannot understand why this camera is in the least bit interesting. I think people get swept up by the Leica name, and there's some history associated with that brand, and so people have warm, fuzzy feelings about this camera. But I don't think that in this modern age we can be making any exceptions for these camera companies. They need to innovate or they're going to become irrelevant. Anyway, I can't figure out for the life of me why this camera is at all interesting. I mean, we're talking about a $5,000 point and shoot camera. I mean, that's literally what this is. It's a $5,000 point and shoot camera. It doesn't even have an interchangeable lens. It has a fixed 28mm lens, I think. I mean, sure, it's full frame and it's got a 47 megapixel sensor, but I mean, come on. At the end of the day, it's a point and shoot camera. I remember how some of the videos were making a big deal about how you can punch into 35 millimeters and 50 millimeters and 75 millimeters, and they were making a big deal about it. But I mean, it's just a digital zoom. Come on, let's call it for what it is. It's a digital zoom. My Sony Alpha 65 does that. And we're not even talking about something like Sony's clear image zoom, where you punch in, but it still gives you a full 24 megapixel picture with minimal loss in quality due to some kind of camera magic. No, when the Leica Q2 crops in, the picture just gets smaller. I mean, at 75 millimeters, you get down to about a 7 megapixel picture. So I can't understand why anybody thinks that this camera is at all exciting or interesting. I mean, sure, I bet it's got kick-ass image quality. But you know what else has nice image quality? The James Webb Telescope. That's a $10 billion camera, and I heard it's medium format. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Leica Q2 has good image quality and it's fun to use. I'm not going to deny that. But the mere fact that it is a point and shoot camera that sells for $5,000 makes it the least interesting camera of all. There's just no reason why a camera like that should be getting the amount of press coverage that it does. So I wanted to make a video about this because I feel like this phenomenon, this thing where something as absurd as the Leica Q2 can get this kind of press coverage is indicative of where we are these days when it comes to marketing for cameras. Camera companies basically just buy favorable press coverage, and this is a perfect example of that. Okay, we're talking about a very uninteresting, lackluster camera that is low on specs, but because Leica sent out these units to all these different YouTubers, people talk about it. And these YouTubers, they say that they were sent the cameras, they disclose that, okay? But then they also follow that up by saying, well, these are my own objective opinions. I'm telling it like it is. I'm telling you the truth about what I think. And it's nice to think that that's true. And I do honestly believe that those YouTubers believe that. But the problem is, there's no way that these guys aren't swayed in some way by these camera companies that send them gear. I mean, I think it'd be a different story if they got sent something that truly was a turd on a stick. Then I think in that scenario, I don't think any YouTuber will sing its praises. But for any even competent camera, I don't think any YouTubers can get away from bias. And the reason is because these YouTubers rely on camera companies sending them gear on early access so that they can make videos talking about them. And the earlier you can get videos up on YouTube about the latest gear, the more views and the more clicks they get. And more views and more clicks equals more money. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what's happening here with the Leica Q2. You know, people want to be sent Leica cameras so that they can talk about it on their channel and get views. And so even if they feel like they're giving an honest opinion, they have to hold back a little bit. They don't dare bite the hand that feeds them. I mean, this is a camera that, it's not only a fixed lens point and shoot camera, but it also takes Apple's approach to design by eliminating all the ports just to make it extra inconvenient to use. Like, what other camera company would you accept this kind of product from? Now, I don't want to bash Leica exclusively here because I'm sure you guys will think that I'm just not a Leica fan. I'm not a Leica fan, but I'm willing to admit that there are other camera companies that do the exact same thing. In fact, I am primarily a Sony user, and I think Sony has one of the most egregious examples of buying press recently. I mean, Sony flew out so many YouTubers out to San Francisco and Catalina Island in order to spread the word about the A6400. And I'm not going to pretend that isn't in the same vein as what Leica did. It's actually on an even more massive scale. Okay, so Sony is definitely guilty of the same tactics, and they are an even worse offender. But that said, the A6400 is at least somewhat reasonably priced and pretty full featured. There are a few things that we gripe about: the flip up screen instead of a flip out screen, the lack of in-body stabilization, but that's it. Otherwise, this camera pretty much delivers on all fronts. I mean, it offers an autofocus system that, while is not as good as the A9, rivals the A9 and is amongst the very best of any camera out there. The Leica Q2 still only uses contrast detect. It doesn't even use phase detect. So yeah, I mean, Sony definitely bought good press, okay? All those YouTubers that talked about the A6400 a couple months ago, you know, they also did the same thing. They claim to be objective, and they claim to give you the honest opinion, even though they were all flown out there on Sony's dime. But the thing is, I don't believe that any of them were free of bias for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. But that said, it's an affordable camera that is relatively full-featured, and so I'm not that bitter about it. And it truly is an exciting camera, and I see its faults, and I still bought it. It's what I'm filming on right now. But the Leica Q2, I think, is inexcusable, precisely because it is a very, very lackluster camera that sells for $5,000. It is an uninteresting camera precisely because of its price. If that camera were on sale for $500, that would be an interesting camera, and we should be talking about it. But at $5,000, it shouldn't get any coverage, in my opinion. It's a camera meant for Leica snobs and Leica fanboys. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to make a very quick video and just get that off my chest, because I see that there have been more Leica Q2 reviews surfacing recently. and it just reminded me of how I felt 2 weeks ago when I first heard about this camera. So that's it. I'll see you in the next one. And for those who are interested, I am shooting on a Cine 2 Gamma and Pro Color. I am using zebra stripes, auto white balance, auto ISO. The shutter speed is at 1/30 of the second. And I am shooting at 1080p 30 frames a second. I forgot my Zoom H1n at work, so I am recording on the Blue Yeti directly into the camera.